All over the country, all over this country, men and women are walking out of our prison system. These were some of the youngest people to be charged with criminal offenses. Well, these men and women are walking out of the prison system based off of actual innocence, based off of Miller, based off of other unconstitutional practices that have been permitted by our court system for very, very, very long time. Today on Back in Society Radio, we want to talk about the transition that it will take for some of these men and women to make from a prison back into society. Most people that are incarcerated deal with a false notion, a false pretense of what it really require out in society. Most are misled and thinking in negativity. How in negativity? Well, most think that things operate today as it did back before they were incarcerated, and times are different. Times have changed, times have elevated, even down to simple robbery have elevated in how it's these robberies are committed, even down to the style of just anything in life. Everything have changed. Some of these young men and women have literally served much as 2 decades inside of our prison system. I mean, 2 long decades inside of a prison system in which we all know today to be inhumane. This means that once these young people that entered into a prison system is released, most are released and provided very little reentry programming. Uh, I cannot recall, but it could possibly have occurred, but I don't know of many that have received psychological treatment as a result of the torture effects that exist behind our prison walls. We are a people that must understand that America has gotten it wrong. America has gotten it wrong so long where that now these millions of dollars in which they were so eager to give, it has stretched now into, man, upwards to hundreds of millions of dollars. And the cost of wrongful convictions and police misconduct and police gunning people down without justification. Where did this practice come in at? This practice is a practice that now have literally left men and women to be pawns of being gunned down in the middle of the street by law enforcement, and law enforcement basically it's showing through the Van Dyke murder upon this young brother Quan McDonald. It's showing that it was a systematic culture for police officers to, they stuck with the same protocol. Well, the suspect launched at them, or they had a gun, or maybe they did something with the motor vehicle and tried to hurt them and they had to open fire. Well, now, thanks to video, these things are now become people's reality as to what took place before it ever reaches a court system. Anita Alvarez in the city of Chicago, she should know firsthand, as she lost her job basically due to the fact of her undesirable uh, stance towards individuals that were mistreated by police. In other words, when I say undesirable, meaning it was almost impossible to get a criminal charge brought against a police officer in the city of Chicago once clearly men or women had been gunned down. From the Browley case, and I think that happened in the early 1990s at some point. Uh, I think it was a case that occurred, I think, like around 63rd Street in the 90s, and police shot her as she was moving for her cell phone. And, since that time, we still ain't got it right. We still ain't got it right. As I opened up this program, you know, children that you incarcerate and you keep inside of a prison system and you are claiming that they are guilty of crimes, man, they must be given extensive reentry. Kids that were juveniles and sentenced to natural life in tow at the ages of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, that they would die inside of a prison, meaning they were told by a judge, hey, you will die inside of a prison system. Well, these brothers now are, by the grace of God, able to have opportunity to gain their freedom through a decision of Miller versus Alabama. And while many are upset over what took place with brother uh, Adolfo Davis, some brothers are walking out. And as a result of these brothers walking out, we're going to have to reach a level as to how can we put pressure on government to acknowledge the fact that not just these young kids, but all ex-offenders across America deserve a second opportunity. A lot of people don't understand that, when you go after change, something that is so systematically as a hook that basically help uh, the American elected official to constantly get away with uh, not providing adequate jobs, because that's what happens. It allows them to not get away, because then they discriminate against so many millions. Now imagine if they had to provide everyone with a job. Think about that. That means that now you would have, I'm talking about just a major problem. Think about all the wrongful convictions if those brothers had never even went to prison. That means this government would have to have made some type of way to provide an honest living for them. See? So now taking them out of society, and like to hear the reality or not, but somewhere along the 1990s, we fell off out here in society. And when we fell off, bad laws creeped in. That's what it is. And when the bad laws creeped in, now these laws have served as handcuffs. I'm talking about going before a judge and saying, well, hey, judge, I'm innocent. That's almost like smacking the judge upside his head. That's the way the criminal justice system treat the poor. Say, now, if you have some O.J. Simpson money, and I'm not speaking in a negative way against O.J.'s defense, but I'm just speaking of to show that if you have money, then guess what? Man, your chances are of beating those cases or having the charges reduced. Man, I'm talking about it's great. I'm talking about it's very great. So we are a society right now. You know what our problem is? We ain't learned how to communicate. Some of the ones who do know how to communicate, now you want to act like damn fools, and the system comes against you because they're all separated. It just makes it easy for the system to do what it wants to do and get away with what it wants to get away with. Too many mothers are suffering all across America. Too many fathers are suffering all across America. Too many children are suffering all across them. You know what? As a result of Pookie got locked up. 9 out of 10 times the police did violate Pookie's rights. There's a great possibility maybe Pookie did commit the crime. But see, we are a criminal justice system, and which it says is this. You know, if you discover the hook, it ain't good enough. The American people supposed to hoo-ha against you and demand justice and scream and okay, but when the system admits its fault, it does the same thing. People remain quiet, calm, and says nothing. So the bottom line of it is wrong thinking produce wrong results. And here in America, the people have been mm, 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 they've been sold a dream that had potential but has long expired here in America. And because that dream has long expired, and because some people wish to still teach that dream, and the dream has expired, what it has allowed is tarantulas in its own community. You know, here's the super poor, and here's the well, they 1/2 of a paycheck from being poor. So they clash. That's what they do. They clash. The others, they go to areas which they got to pay property taxes so high. Man, so it's like, damn if you do, and damn if you don't. Let me give you some idea here. If there was a shutdown, and this is the thing that people fail to realize, what did King do? King said, well, guess what? I'm going to support this Montgomery boycott of these buses here. Okay? Well, let me tell you, are we a people that are so blind and so confused that we can't do the same thing all over again? Yeah, it's hard. You know why it's hard? Because a lot of people don't know how to share. So when little Tina need a ride, yeah, you want to give her a ride. Hmm. See, so the bottom line of it is you ain't learned how to share. And I would like to believe that the mindset of the people back then was much different. Much different how? They were taught different. They were taught no matter what. The people in your household, you protect them at all costs. And you don't let nobody do anything to your sisters. That's what they were taught. And they were taught when that sun, well, meaning when that light post came on. That came on generally around 8 o'clock, sometimes 7:45. If you ain't in the house, you knew what that meant. See, so guess what? The parents didn't need to be the parents. The kids was taught, and the kids knew when that light came on. If they wasn't on that porch, mm, mm, mm. Well, that kept a lot of the problems down. Oh my gosh, it was no need to call the police. Yeah, little Tina occasionally she wanna dip off and whatnot. Well, when she went home, she would guarantee to not pull that stunt no time soon. See, so the bottom line of it is we call the correction wrong. So now outgrowing what was in place with a generation now, a whole generation gap. So now you want to say, well, man, that was wrong. Man, don't you see how them old people that mass incarceration was definitely down. hmm It was definitely down. Kids knew curfews automatically. Want me to tell you, if they didn't know it, they got little watches, and them watches went off at them times, and they ran home. Like I'm talking about, if you thought O.J. Simpson could run home, they could run home. So I'm not going to say that the system didn't create the conditions for today, because they were doing that way back then. Just a lot of people couldn't see. I remember, back in the late part of the 1970s when Jordache jeans came out. Yeah, remember Jordache? So Jordache wanted to sell their blue jeans roughly about like $30. Levi say, y'all want to do that? We'll sell you farmer jeans and we'll sell them for $50. Say, they put the little name tag up there, everybody walking around with the farmer jeans on. See, so now Michael Jordan said, guess what? Look like I got the ear and the eye and the heart of the people. I'm going to sell them some gym shoes for $200. People go crazy. Man, I know times elevated, but the paychecks didn't elevate. They elevated just a little bit. So we gotta think realistic. If the people who never have committed crimes and never have been to prison, or even those that have never been accused of crimes, this society feel dedicated to them, but still can't provide to them. Can't provide to most of them whole entire households. And we are people that don't quite see the decay. You take little Timmy. Little Timmy is a kid. And you work with little Timmy a couple of years inside of a juvenile setting. And you release little Timmy. Not is only little Timmy gonna have youth left, but little Timmy is going to have something here on his mind. You start him off going to school. I feel that's the way a juvenile justice system should look. Well, you take little Timmy, he's 13 years old, you slam him inside of a prison system. You expose him to rapes and murders and drug sales and all of this type of stuff that goes on inside of a prison. And then you tell little Timmy, guess what? Just go on out there and have a nice life, little Timmy. What did you learn? Oh man, I learned how to sharpen a shank. Is what your bucks teach. So the system comes, it calls its fancy news conferences, and it applauds the government. It applauds the people for allowing it to now set up services that don't exist or partially exist, or maybe they was misrepresented when maybe you've seen it on the news. However, that person is suffering. The person got to be released back out into society. The person got to try to struggle out here. Not only do the person got to try to struggle out here in society, society change is toxic. So people talking about, well, how toxic can society be compared to a prison? Well, I can tell you this much. This is the funniest thing I can't grasp onto. If I'm hungry, inside of a prison, I can get a noodle from somebody. A noodle. At least they fed me. They gave me something. Out here, man, you may go to jail if you ask somebody for a noodle. Something wrong with that picture. Now, homeless existed when I was a kid, but you couldn't tell. And you couldn't tell because people, they had a heart. So today, most people, they own the same garbage this world on. They own the same page, sitting there talking about their neighbors like a dog, and they doing the same thing. Then they talking about, well, man, we need change. How we going to get some change? You doing the same thing. Same cycle that person's child went through, now your child going through. Shoot, that one over there in the Audi home, the other one over there in across the street in the Audi home. See, one go to the juvenile home, the other one go to the prison. However it is, it's two scarred human beings from that day forth, from the date of being adjudicated guilty of a crime. Damn if they committed the crime, damn if they didn't commit the crime, the system don't care. A lot of people like roses with reality, and sometimes roses gotta stay in its proper context. This is not a conversation for roses, it's a conversation for truth. What are we gonna do? Most of these brothers and sisters that are juvenile lifers in the state of Illinois, they are African American people. That's what they are. And I think last that I checked, it was something like about 74 or 76% in the state of Illinois. What are we going to do as far as sustaining their lives and making sure that, well, at least government is held accountable to some type of degree for taking lives, human being lives, and they use them as guinea pigs. That's what they did. Use them as guinea pigs. They put them in supermaxes that they knew that these guys couldn't withstand, and they experimented on them. Mind, soul, and body. Shoot, you may get a letter inside of Illinois prisons 90 days after the letter was sent. Can you imagine you getting a letter and it's informing you about a loved one dying and what to do so that you could possibly go to the funeral? Well, when you got it, the person had the funeral and the ground, the tombstone, and everything. So the thing about it is not supporting crime. I'm not supporting crime at all. How do we redeem? How do we redeem individuals that never had lives back into society? I don't think many people fully get that here. Take someone, here it is, mothers and people who's watching this right now. Let me take your child at the precious age of 15, and let me put your child inside of a bedroom for 20 straight years. All your child have is access to the backyard and a television and a radio. That's all your child have, no outside other than in that backyard. Limited newspapers, limited contact with people in society as well. And let me hold the mail up for 3 weeks, and what you're going to have is someone who has been traumatized, traumatized through conditions that is unrealistic conditions. Say, well, unrealistic, they shouldn't have committed the crime. Well, ain't prisons to take in the bad people and to make them well again and to release them back into society? Ain't that their jobs? So if they can't do their jobs, they must all be fired. And it ain't just the Illinois thing, it's a nation problem. It's a nation problem, starting from our President of the United States of America on down. It's a nation problem. Why would Barack Obama, being the highest sitting official in the U.S., clearly knowing of the Byrd scandal during his era, and never once have brought it up? He was the senator in Chicago, right there in the ghetto, man. How quick do we forget? So we don't understand our history. I realized today that the police, they just shooting people. That's what they do. Else they fabricate evidence and they lock you up. Now you sit in prison, you sit there for 10, 20, 30 years of your life, and the system says, well, guess what? We can't make no more money off of his youth. Say, because, they made the money, because it takes human beings to work inside of the jails and prisons. So now they abuse your youth. So they say, well, we have no further intentions for Mr. Blah, blah, blah. Just let that person get out however that person wants to get out. We ain't learned that playtime is over. We suffering and we suffering and we suffering. We suffering as a whole. It's called a lot of bad, wrong decisions, all in that little bowl right there. See, the ones who made it ain't in that circle. They watching. They watching the circle. That's what has happened to us. Where that now we have become to be individuals where that the system is being exposed. Look at this young 14-year-old child out of Detroit, Michigan. This brother pleads guilty. This is a child though, but he pleads guilty totally to a crime he never even committed. I bet you that fly completely over America's head. And you know what America's saying right now? Well, I bet you he did something else down the road in life. Duh, get it. The kid confessed. What makes that kid confess? He confessed. The kid will tell you he confessed. So that means these conditions inside of these interrogation rooms must be overboring. That fantasy inside of the mindset of young kids always immediately taken to be true. I bet you the police didn't do no field investigation or nothing, just took the confession, took it in front of the grand jury, got the indictment, coached the kid because he had an attorney that was ineffective, got the kid all scared, the kid confesses, now the kid ends up in prison. Comes to find out, a hitman, out of all people, comes and says, guess what, I did it. Still takes time for the kid to get out. However, he got out. Now, as we screaming about Donald Trump speaking at certain places, how much screaming are we going to do because the system messed this young kid's life up? That young boy is 23 years of age today. From the age of 15 years old. You enter a system, the guards are screaming and hollering and disruptive and abusive. So now he has to program and condition himself to these horrible, inhumane conditions. And he has to sit there. All based off of, guess what? Fantasy. It's called immaturity. It's called being unrealistic. The key of it is, just because a person confessed to a crime, shouldn't it be investigated to make sure that what is put in the confession is true? Who failed in that particular area? Meaning, if the kid didn't commit the crime, that means a lot of things in that confession was not true, and that it was complete fantasy. Who failed? Yes, his attorney failed, but who else failed? There are many people that have failed, probably been promoted all up the ladder, sitting as judges and whatnot. People, we better rise up. Today is your children. It's your children. I bet you everybody who didn't watch this, you got a child, a loved one, a friend, or somebody they locked up. Most of them, they writing you and they telling you how the conditions is. Matter of fact, the U.S. Postal Master out here in society, there's only two things they need it for. Bills and prison letters. That's it. You take away bills and prison letters, then guess what? The U.S. Postal Service, they have to retire. It's all a commodity. Somebody else making money, the prisoner sitting in there ain't getting an ounce of rehabilitation. Sure, becoming dumber and dumber and dumber as a box of rocks. And society is saying, well, guess what? He ought to know better now. Come on, how is he going to know better? And ain't nobody taught him anything. The man just sat there like a box on a log inside of a prison cell, just sitting there, sure, watching TV. Sure, a prisoner could tell you every program that come on television. The TV guide is right there. Because that's all they doing, sitting there and laying in the bunk all day watching television. See, they may let them out for maybe yard every other day, or some of them maybe 3 times a week, a couple of showers a week, and shoot, the rest of it, you in that cell. Yeah, you get a visit, your mama can't even give you a hug, and she better not kiss you at the table. So this is the system that calls itself coming together and working together for the people. It has showed you clearly that it could create a gap, an entire gap, where you ain't even got a voice, you ain't even got a say so over nothing that goes on. Shoot, prison guard can beat your child half to death right in front of your face. And you can leave that prison and scream and holler and make all the noise you want to. 9 out of 10 times it will be covered up. That's because we are a people that have allowed too much power into the wrong hands. Now that we have allowed that power into the wrong hands, we are acting as a people that don't know how to get it back. Yes, we are a people that must gain rights for ex-offenders back into this society. You ever want to see the crime rates drop? Give them jobs, give them opportunities, and I guarantee you the crime rates drop. I guarantee you most of the crime in society begin to decrease. You know why? Because those older individuals now, they not just sitting around and whatnot in the neighborhood. Most of them so depressed and whatnot. They depressed because shoot, everything they try out in life, it fails. So we call this a land of opportunity. So the first thing that the one of these brothers, they go into one of their I'm talking about just a snapping move, and the whole society, oh, did you see how violent? Well, you're not saying what you did to him to rattle his cage. And that's the thing. We as a people, we ain't learned how to communicate. We as a people, man, we waging war against each other in the system, like they sitting way on the outside eating popcorn, laughing and giggling. They laughing and giggling because we are a people that have taken our eyes off of the true prize. So think, man, churches, and I know it's hard out here, it's hard out here for everybody. Churches, start to prepare some type of, ask the members in your church to give clothing and stuff that they may not want. Because there's so many of these brothers, they getting out like, man, droves. So when they get out, can you imagine being a kid and you did like say 30 years in prison, and now you ain't dealt with no risk, and you just out. Now you got to survive. Think about that. So yeah, a lot of people say, yeah, who gonna keep this stuff and who gonna do this? And man, listen here. If you got a prison ministry, that means you know people who getting out of prison. Not only do you know people that's getting out of prison, but they know people that's getting out of prison. And you spread and you help the people the best way that you can help the people. Because let me tell you, until these conditions are changed uh, through forms of the church and organizations in our communities, man, it's not going to get changed no time soon. So we got to start to think. We got to start to think. Yeah, a lot of people don't want the message, the true message, to get out there. Man, don't become bit by the ignorance of this society. You know, in order for little Tony to have an opportunity, there's going to have to be opportunities put into play for a little opportunity to exist for Tony. No opportunity there, can Tony have an opportunity to exist? So that's something that we got to think about. See, I can just tell you that in the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be common for individuals walking out of prisons that served 30 years. It's going to be common. And the thing about it is, how can the community bridge together to be helped towards their brothers and their sisters who may have made some mistakes in society? How can you help them? That's what I want you to think about this week on Back in Society Radio. And as you think of these ways to help people, I want you to begin to advocate those ways with organizations in your community. Not only organizations in your community, you start to advocate it. And you got Facebook, you got all of these other social media outlets. You start to advocate it. You start to get the word out. See, let me tell you, you do better when you know better. You can't say that you don't know better. You know why? You getting the truth. You getting the truth. It may be uncut truth, but you getting the truth. It's time that we wake up. It's time that we wake up. Children are our tomorrow. And we must figure out some type of way to put them back on the right track, absent becoming to be a statistic of mass incarceration. We know that the system has no problem with locking up people. They have showed us that clearly, that locking young kids up beyond its productivity in some instances has become to be the norm. Louisiana, where we saw Gary Tyler walk out of prison after 41 years. This was a young kid that was put into a prison system based off of a conviction that really caused many across this nation to question, had this young child been wrongfully convicted. However, this young child ended up spending 41 years in prison. Today he's out. He's been out maybe 3 weeks at the most. And I know he's out here and he's like, oh my gosh. Yes. I think people already in society don't understand that people that were inside of the prison system wrongfully, or if they even committed a crime, they had a higher expectation for society. They thought that it would be of something of greater expectation than what they see. And maybe it's the norm, but to many it's pretty disturbing. So these young children, especially out in Pennsylvania, Michigan, California, state of Illinois, Texas, I want you to be watchful of these brothers and sisters that will be returning back into your society. And I want you to try to help them. Let me tell you, guess what? Helping ain't always giving a person $1 million or giving them thousands of dollars or whatever, but it can be in time. Help can be in the place of just helping them to get a couch or helping them to get a stove or start helping, because many of them, they don't have no families. Many of them, when they went to prison, they may have seen their brothers or sisters maybe 2 or 3 times in that 30 or 40 years. So now they're coming back out. They really don't know their brothers and their sisters and brothers really don't know them. So we got to start to look at this realistically and think of ways how we can be a blessing to brothers and sisters that are getting out of our prison system. Uh, Man, Illinois, wake up. Chicago, wake up. You must demand in your communities restorative justice programs, funding for restorative justice programs. That's where it's needed at, but it's not more so there. So let's keep that in mind. So I want to thank you for tuning in this week on Back Into Society Radio. Well, audio stream now. Uh, and I want you to give some thought of some of the things that I discussed with you this week. If you are dealing with a child that is difficult to deal with, try taking that child to maybe some place where you know a lot of ex-offenders are. Meaning, in Chicago, I know around St. Leonard's Place and other places like that. You know why I say that? Sometimes these kids need to hear the reality. Man, today in our prison system, it absolutely have nothing there. So taxpayers are paying all of these millions and millions of dollars to fund for human bodies to be warehoused inside of institutions, not to make them better, but to make them worse. I think we need to gain 1/10 of that the brothers come out worse. Whose responsibility is it to rehabilitate? It's the system's responsibility to rehabilitate. Is it any type of requirement upon the offender? Yes, it requires willingness and it requires that person's participation. I think that if these people are taught, oh my gosh, man, talking about the productivity in society would be just great. That means when they come out of prison and they see the garage falling, that they know how to build it, because that's the things that they traded and that's the things that they learned. Maybe some of them learn plumbing, some of them may learn uh, welding, or there's just all type of different things. Right now they have no opportunity to learn anything that is of a value back into the society. You know, they'll give them an angry management certificate, but what can an angry management certificate do? Can't get you a job. Shoot, it can't feed you. So people need to begin to wake up to that reality a little bit more. But Thank you for joining this week's program in Back in Society. The young brother out of Detroit, Michigan. Oh my gosh, that was a tragedy. Someone should be held accountable for that wrongful conviction, and it must go farther than just the defense attorney in that particular case. I mean, this is a case in which the state of Michigan lawmakers could use as a tool to really usher in some reforms that can be of a benefit to the people and to respect the integrity of justice within its criminal court system, knowing that at least the people that they have found guilty are guilty individuals. Well, all across this nation, they can't rest assured upon that statement due to the fact that we have seen the faulties within our criminal justice system, and the faulties is great. Once again, I want to thank you for tuning in to Back into Society, and I hope that you really gave it some thought as to the things that we discussed on this week's program. I look to see you next week as we will also follow some of the facts and some of the things around activism that is taking place across this country. Thank you, and free Kevin Cooper, free Rodney Reed, free each and every man on death row, free them all. You know why? Because that stuff is cruel and unusual punishment. I don't support it at all. Thank you.